Okay, so now in this part of the tutorial, it's the last part of 2, what we're going to be doing is taking this fraction object that we've created in the first one and applying a user interface to it. So now go to the appcontroller.h file, that's the header file, and just like we did for the other one, for the fraction object we're going to be writing the instance variables and the declarations of methods in the .h file. So for this one, what we're going to need is 3 text fields, so that the user in the user interface can put in the numerator, the denominator, and then we can display the fraction in the third one. So first type IB outlet ns text field pointer, and then the name will be text field numerator. Text field denominator and text field fraction. Okay, now let me explain the IB outlet thing in a minute. I'll get to it. Then for this one, don't type IB outlet, just type ns button pointer click button. Okay, now for the methods, we're only going to need one, and this is going to be of the type IB action, and it will be called display fraction, and we'll need a parameter of type ID sender. Okay, now let me explain the IB outlet IB action thing. Okay, so IB actions are things, they're fairly simple. They're basically voids, which means that there's no return type. They're simply doing an action, except it has to do with the user interface. It's not just simply doing an action. Like for the set numerator, set denominator methods of the first one, we're simply doing an action, but it has nothing to do with the interface. We're just setting the numerator equal to this new passed parameter. Now, what ID sender means is that the display fraction method is going to be called or performed by an object. Now that object will be the click button, okay? But see, the compiler doesn't know what the sender is going to be. So we use the type ID to say that it has a type, but we just don't know what it is. Now, you and I know that it's a click button, but we have to actually set it up in the user interface. So because we haven't done that yet, the parameter is sort of just this object, and that's why we used ID sender, because it's so vague. Now, so hopefully now you understand how or why we use IB action, because it's the driving kind of force for the user interface. Now, IB outlets are things that kind of are an outlet for actions. So the click button is going to perform this this action, but what it's going to need is 2 things: the text field for the numerator, the text field for the denominator, and the fraction. So an outlet is a little more vague, it's a little less specific, because it doesn't necessarily need to be just the text box that displays the actual fraction. So it's not necessarily something that displays, because the numerator denominator text box will be just objects on the user interface that we're going to be gathering information from. So it's kind of like, the way that I had to explain to me was, if you think of a tunnel with 1 entrance and 3 exits, the action is driving your car into the tunnel. Now the outlet are the three the outlets are the three exits to the tunnel. Now choosing where to display the fraction would be one of the tunnels that you chose to go through. Now, or one of the exits to go through, but the other two are still there, but they serve a slightly different purpose. So hopefully that makes sense, and you'll see it a little easier in when we actually build out the user interface. So now I'm going to copy the method over to the implementation file, the .m file. And so what we're going to need to do is actually create a new fraction object. So I'm going to say fraction. Oh wait, first we need to import fraction.h, and what that means is that we're going to be using things that are in the fraction.h file, the methods and the instance variables. So fraction frac equals, and let me take this out. Okay, so remember the brackets entail a method call, and so what we're doing here is there's a fraction class method, because if you go to the fraction file, notice that it's inheriting from the NSObject class, meaning that it's inheriting from a very, very vague, basic class file that entails what an object is. And inheritance is basically like what you would think of for parents and children, like you inherit certain properties, certain methods, and things like that. So the NSObject class has a method called alloc, and so the fraction class file is calling alloc, and what alloc does is allocates memory to an object. So it's allocating memory right here. Now that object is now calling the method init. Init means initialize, so it's initializing a fraction object with allocated memory to it. Oh, and make this a pointer. So then what we're going to do is say frac set numerator, and that is going to be, let me do it this way, int num equals text field numerator int value. Okay. Let me save that so I get the autocompletes. Int denom equals text field denominator int value. So here again we're calling methods with the brackets. We're getting the int value, and that's returning the int value of what's in the text field. Now what we're going to do is call frac set numerator equal to num, and frac set denominator equal to denom. Okay, now I want you to notice very quickly that num equals this. Set numerator is passing num. So if you think about your math class, in the equation, like let me just put a comment. Let's say x equals 2y. Okay, and let's say y equals 3x. Well, now I can plug y into the x equation. X equals 2 times 3x, right? So because y is equal to that, we get our we can just plug it in, right? So instead of doing this way, what I can do is actually just replace num here with that method. So we don't have to bother setting up new integer variables, num and denom. So we can do that and get rid of this. So where the parameter is going to be whatever this returns. And then what we're going to do is now take the text field fraction, and we're going to say set string value is equal to format fraction, and that's that method call that we were going to use. So now we're done with that code. Now let's build the user interface. So now we're done with that. Resources, main menu, .xib. So all the text field numerator, text field denominator all of this is completely separate because text field numerator corresponds to no text box at this point. So hopefully that makes sense. There's no correspondence yet. So I'm going to type in text field or text find text field in the library. Copy paste twice, and then drag these down. Actually, I'm going to put labels on here just to define which ones are which. So this one's going to be for the numerator, if I can type. And then this one's going to be the final fraction. Line it up. And then I'm going to pull out a button. So grab a push button and put it right here. Make it a little larger. Just put something in there. So resize the form. And now we're done except for one thing. There's still no correspondence, because how would the compiler know that this one was the numerator, this one was the denominator, and this one was the fraction? I mean, some might say, well, you know, the labels, but remember that they're all separate objects. So there's no correspondence between the label there and the text box there. They're all separate. So, because theoretically this could, what if I just wanted to call this n? You know, it wouldn't know the difference. So now what we're going to do is grab an ns object, remember what we're inheriting from, and pull it down into the main menu.xib file here. So now I'm going to click on it and grab the object's identity and have it inherit from app controller. So app controller is now correspondent to this, but we still haven't set up the correspondence. We've just set up the correspondence from the class file. But if I right click on this, you see that app controller has 3 outlets and a received action. So text field denominator, all I have to do is grab the plus, drag it over. Text field fraction is going to be this one. Text field numerator is going to be this one. And then the received action is going to go to the click. And then just save it. And then go back to Xcode, build and run. I need a bracket here to end that. Sorry about that. And here's our program. Let's say numerator is 3, denominator is 4, click 3/4. Try it again, 5/7, Now let's try text. So it doesn't work, but at least there's no exception thrown. So yeah. Alright, there you go.